Hello and welcome to the story of the West Coast Eagles and the Carlton Football Club, a new series here on the channel as we preview games with a little extra layer added to it. So what I want to do in this video is talk about my favourite moment against the Eagles and my least favourite moment against the Eagles. And then I'm going to ask you at the end of the video to do the exact same. So we'll start with the worst. And it would have to be, there's a few. I considered 2021 when we played the Eagles at the SCG. They had a lot of outs and they still beat us. And this was a time where we thought, that the Blues were ready to take the next step, start beating these teams in these positions, and it wasn't to be. But I think it would be remiss of me to not talk about 2011, the elimination final, or the semi-final, I should say, because the Blues had won the elimination final the week before against the Bombers. I remember it like it was yesterday. For me, growing up, I think I was 21 at the time, 20 or 21, and so it was okay. I'm a teenager, or I've just exited teenage years. I'm in that early phase of my adulthood. The Blues have risen. We've gone through the rebuild. We drafted Murphy, Gibbs, Cruiser, Judd. They had a bit of pain. 2009, we lost to the Lions in the first final. Then the year after that, 2010, we lost to the Swans in the elimination final in a very close one. And then 2011 was, the year. You got a couple of disappointing finals exits under your belt. And I was like, okay, this is us. This is it. We're ready. And we had a pretty good year that year. 2011 was my favourite year alive as a Carlton supporter that I can actually remember. So we had belted the Bombers in 2011. Then we went down in Western Australia and we played the Eagles in the semi-final. And it was a great game. We started so well. I still remember Aaron Joseph kicking a goal in that first. I still remember Heath Scotland kicking a goal on the run and celebrating to the crowd. The Eagles kicked 8 goals in the second quarter and got their game back on their terms. We were down by 11 at halftime. Game was in the balance, down by 9 at three-quarter time. And then we ended up losing by 3. And I think that was my first... I remember, I think I was crying that day. I was devastated for weeks because I was convinced, and I've had to get over it. I was convinced that Andrew Walker was held by Darren Glass. If you go back and watch the tape, Darren Glass is holding him like this. So I'm Darren Glass, the chair is Andrew Walker, and he was holding him like this, and it should have been a fucking free kick, and we should have won that game. But obviously you never blame umpires, because I'm sure there were moments in that game where we missed certain shots on goal that could have won the game for us, and it was what it was. And I remember being so devastated. I never really hated the Eagles or anything like that. I just remember being so devastated that the season had ended. And I think 12 years later, I look back and now I think to myself, wow, how grateful I should have been that we were playing finals football at least. And, at least we were going out in a tough exit. We were right in the game. We played a really good game, just not good enough. They still had Dean Cox playing. Scott Selwood was in their best. Daniel Kerr, Josh Kennedy, obviously, Matt Prittis, Glass, Nikoski, these types. And so I remember that one stuck with me for many years. Also because we didn't play finals again until 2013. But we didn't quite make it again with that group. It just never happened with that group properly. And that was such a shock to the system. So that was my worst. My best, and this probably goes to show as to where we've been as a club, but I think my best moment that I can remember was round 6, 2014. And we played the Eagles at Marvel. I believe it was called Etihad back then, in 2014. And the season started pretty slowly. This was the year after we had played in that final against the Tigers, and the season had started a little slowly, relatively. And the Eagles were on the rise. They had their dip, and I just remember we were down by 24 points in the fourth quarter. And I don't know where it happened or what happened, but we won the game. And I still remember the moment that lingers in my memory and stays with me is Mark Murphy running down the wing, kicks the ball ahead, and then it gets to our forward line. And I remember Troy Menzel kicking a goal, and I remember absolutely roaring because the Eagles were a team that we just weren't able to get a hold of for a while, like consistently. And so, yeah, I remember that game. As I said, it also goes to show, where we were as a club for this to be my favorite moment. Obviously, we've beaten them pretty convincingly early in season 2023, but I didn't quite feel that same excitement as what I felt on this day. And I think at that time as well, we were on not the rebuild, but there was still a bit of belief that we could do something. History books will go to show that that was just not the case. We were not good. And so Menzel represented one of the few players who we had where I remember he'd be part of the future, which it never ended up eventuating. And, again, looking back now, it's 2023, 9 years on. I look back now and I think, wow, we didn't really have a list that presented with it a future for the club. Now we have that, with the guys that we drafted from 2015 onwards, we now have that. They're now entering that mature phase of their careers. So those are my memories, my best, my worst. 2021 gets a special mention for the worst. That was terrible. I still remember the fan cams that day. We were losing our minds. So yeah, what about you? What do you remember about the West Coast Eagles? I know that for those who are a little older, you would probably have more memories from the early 90s. They're the ones I really want to grasp because I don't really remember them. So let me know in the comments below whether you've got memories from the early 90s or the 2000s era. What are your memories of the West Coast Eagles? Your best memory and your worst memory? Let me know in the comments below and we'll go from there.